The next step in the DriveWorksXpress design process is to create the input form. I'll click the next arrow in the task pane to proceed. Here you create the various inputs required for the DriveWorks form and select the type of input you want. I'll expand the Type drop-down menu, and you can see the 5 input styles available. Text box allows you to enter alphanumeric information. Numeric text box lets you enter numeric information only, with the ability to set upper and lower limits. Drop-down will present a menu with a list of selections. Spin button is for a numeric selection with limits and an incremental value defined. Finally, checkbox is for a logical yes or no option. The type of control will depend on the input required. However, there are many cases where multiple control types will work. For example, if I want to create an input for the drawn by property, I can either use a standard text box for the designer to manually input their name, or I can create a drop-down list of only the designers that have access to the model. Similarly, for the length, I can use a numeric text box to manually enter a number between 2 limits, or I can create a spin button with the same limits defined, but also with an incremental value to limit the options. It normally just comes down to the amount of freedom or control you want over the model, as well as other constructability constraints. I'll start by creating a control for the Drawn by Custom property. Instead of creating a drop-down menu with a set of names already defined, I'll use a text box. Notice that there is a warning symbol next to the box for name. The warning symbol indicates an error or some required information is missing. I'll type in a name for the text box. Note that the names for the inputs do not have to identically match the names of the captured properties they will be linked to, but it is very useful to have corresponding names to help create the rules and make filling out the form straightforward. Also, the names given here for the controls are the ones that will be displayed in the final form, and not the names given to the captured properties. Notice that there is an option called Required. When checked, the input must be filled in order for DriveWorks to continue, and it cannot be left blank. I'll be sure the box is checked, and click the next arrow to complete this control. In a new screen, you can see the input is added to the table. I'll click Add to create another control for the length. The type will be a numeric text box. The minimum acceptable value is 2, and the maximum is 36. I'll click the next arrow to finish this control and move on to adding a control for the width. I'll give it a name and choose to make it a spin button. The minimum value will be 0.5 and the maximum will be 6 with an increment of 0.25. I'll create another control for the thickness. The type will be a drop-down, and in the Options section, I'll type in the values for the different sheet metal gauges I want to choose from. I need to create one more input. This will control the corner break feature. The type will be a checkbox, and you can see there are no other options for the checkbox. This is because it is simply a yes or no option. I'll click the next arrow to finish the input. The form is now complete, and DriveWorksXpress lets us test the form. To do this, simply click on the Test button. The form shown here is exactly the same as the final DriveWorks form to create the new models. So if this doesn't look how you want it to, click the arrow to return to the controls list. You can then select any of the controls and press Edit to make any changes. I'll return to the test form and add some values to each of the fields. Notice I have two options at the bottom of the form, Clear and Set Defaults. The Clear option will clear the values I added to the form, and the Set Defaults option will set these values as the default for the form. I recommend setting some sort of defaults, especially during this design stage. Having default values set will allow you to check if your rules are working correctly as you build them in the next step. I'll click Set Defaults and then the next arrow to return to the input table. Before I move on, notice that I did not create an input for every property I captured. You can use rules to define the other properties based on the values inputted from this form.